is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business Europe, live from CGTN in London. I'm Juliet Mann.
And I'm Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. Belarus flights grounded as other airlines avoid Belarusian airspace, with further measures expected over Sunday's Ryanair diversion.
China's foreign minister tells a security conference that Beijing is ready to expand cooperation with Europe.
Taking on the tech giants, Germany's antitrust watchdog launches an investigation into Google.
Chinese computers in an Eastern European factory, while Lenovo chose Hungary for its newest manufacturing hub.
Belarus opposition groups and the Lithuanian government are calling for tougher punishments against Belarus after it forced a passenger plane to land in Minsk on Sunday, arresting an opposition journalist.
The country's president, Alexander Lukashenko, has yet to comment publicly on the incident. But Russia has strengthened its support, accusing the US and other Western nations of double standards. Julia Chapman is in Moscow for us. Good to see you, Julia. Now, international reaction has grown with Russia weighing in, but mostly silence so far from the Belarus government.
That's right, apart from a few sporadic statements insisting that Belarus did nothing wrong coming from the Belarusian Foreign Ministry, we haven't really heard from the top of the government in Belarus. Alexander Lukashenko is due to make a statement in Parliament tomorrow where we could get his version of events on Sunday, but some of the strongest words of support have been coming from here in Russia, where the Foreign Ministry has supported Belarus's version of events. The two foreign ministers, in fact, spoke today on the phone, and the readout from the Russian side was one of support, really buying into the explanation that was given by Belarusian authorities, and they welcomed what they saw as transparency and a commitment to transparency from the Belarusian authorities. They also discussed the consular access to the Russian citizen who was arrested alongside Roman Protasevich. His girlfriend, Sofia Sapega, who we understand this afternoon has been taken into custody for the next 2 months on unknown charges. But of course, Russia has also confirmed that Alexander Lukashenko will be coming here to meet with President Vladimir Putin on Friday. They've also confirmed today that a summit will take place next month between President Vladimir Putin and his US counterpart Joe Biden, and it's very possible that this incident with the flight and the arrest of Roman Protasevich could be a topic on that agenda.
Do we know any more about what's happened to Roman Protasevich, the journalist who was arrested?
A video emerged from pro-government Telegram channels last night in which Protasevich gave a statement where he said that he was not in any ill health, that he was being treated fairly by the police, and he said that he confessed to the crime of inciting public disorder during anti-government protests last year. Now, his father has criticized that. He says it was given under duress. He said it looked like his son's nose had even been broken and that he was wearing quite a lot of makeup. And those concerns were echoed by the Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya from her exile in Lithuania. This is what she had to say about that video.
He said that he's being treated lawfully, but he is clearly beaten and under pressure. There is no doubt that he may be tortured. He was taken hostage, like 421 political prisoners and thousands of people who haven't yet been recognized as political prisoners but are behind bars.
Tikhanovskaya also called President Alexander Lukashenko a threat to European security, and she has urged European leaders to go even further in stopping him.
Julia Chapman in Moscow, thank you.
The European Union has banned Belarusian airlines from its skies and has promised more sanctions, while a number of European airlines say they will avoid Belarus airspace. Tony Waterman's in Brussels for day 2 of an EU leaders summit there. So, Tony, what else was in the EU statement on Belarus, and has anything more been said today?
Well, Robin, these EU leaders acted with unusual swiftness and force, agreeing to not only ramp up sanctions against the Lukashenko regime, many of whom have already been slapped with travel bans and asset freezes, but also to introduce new targeted economic sanctions. These are expected to go after companies and oligarchs which are close to the Belarusian president, and to really these people and these businesses that have been financing his 27-year rule. Targeting these individuals is something that the opposition has been calling for. It will not only potentially hurt Lukashenko and his allies, but it also allows Europe to avoid imposing sanctions on the wider economy. Chancellor Angela Merkel said coming out of this meeting this afternoon that this was sending an important political signal to Belarus, that it's not just going to sit idly by while this is happening. The extent of these sanctions, though, and how far-reaching they are going to be is really the big question here. We're waiting for the Commission at this point to now draw up the proposal on these sanctions, but Europe is walking a bit of a tightrope because it wants to be forceful with Lukashenko over this incident, but it also is very cognizant of not wanting Belarus to run further into Russia's arms. Take a listen, though, to what the Irish Minister of State for European Affairs had to say earlier.
Sanctions will be expanded to individuals and entities, including corporations. I think they will bite. And I think Lukashenko and any other dictators need to get a message that this is not acceptable, because it could, quite frankly, could have been any of us, journalists, politicians, any ordinary citizens, and the trauma that that cabin crew and flight team have gone through, and the other passengers as well.
In addition to these sanctions, the EU also is planning to ban the Belarusian airlines from flying into European airspace, from landing at its airports, and also is encouraging European airlines themselves not to go into the air zone of Belarus. And we actually saw this playing out in real time today. This is a very well-traveled route from Europe to Asia, flying over Belarus. But in the past 24 hours, the air traffic has completely plummeted, and you can see it in real time. You had KLM, SAS, British Airways, Lufthansa, all of them diverting flights today, and has left really this hole on the map, and that hole is Belarus.
And Tony, aside from these measures on Belarus, what else has been agreed, and what else are leaders discussing today?
Well, climate and coronavirus dominated today's session, and they talked about, they pledged to donate at least 100 million doses to low-income countries by the end of this year. This is a number that they're very close to already reaching, in fact, because Denmark and Sweden both said that they were going to donate 3 million doses. This is on top of Italy, France, and Germany, which last week during the Global Health Summit said that they would donate a collective 75 million doses. And really, we're getting to a point now in Europe where there are doses which can start to be donated, because they are saying by the end of September that every single adult that wants a vaccine is going to be able to have a vaccine. There will be enough vaccines to go around. They also talked about ramping up production, also welcomed the COVID certificate, which was introduced or agreed to just last week. Also saying that this could unlock travel for the season going forward. And also the leaders calling for this to be quickly implemented. You even heard the Belgian Prime Minister saying that it could be an early launch. One thing they made far less progress on was climate change. This was supposed to be a meeting where they could perhaps start laying out the roadwork to meet that ambitious target of 2030 from slashing greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55%. But they kind of kicked the can down the road on this issue, waiting for the Commission now to put forward its proposal.
Okay, Tony Waterman in Brussels, thank you.
America's top diplomat has made his first visit to the Middle East. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken pledged $75 million in development assistance to the Palestinians, as well as immediate financial help to rebuild Gaza after last week's conflict. But Blinken also sought to assure Israel of continuing U.S. support. CGTN's Stephanie Freed has more.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken touched down in Jerusalem on Tuesday. He held a joint press conference with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Blinken is in the region for the first time since he was appointed Secretary of State under the Biden administration. In their joint press conference, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu talked about preventing Hamas from rearming itself and also talked about Israel's opposition to the United States rejoining the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, a deal that the U.S. is now looking at and contemplating rejoining. For his part, Secretary of State Blinken said that his visit to the region is based on 4 points, and specifically to Jerusalem and the West Bank town of Ramallah. One is to demonstrate commitment to Israel's security. Two, to reestablish stability in the area, in the region. Three, to help reconstruct Gaza. And four, to rebuild relationships between the White House and the Palestinian Authority.
We know that to prevent a return to violence, we have to use the space created to address a larger set of underlying issues and challenges. And that begins with tackling the grave humanitarian situation in Gaza and starting to rebuild. The United States will work to rally international support around that effort while also making our own significant contributions, including some that I'll announce later today.
After meetings with Prime Minister Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Ashkenazi, Defense Minister Gantz, Blinken traveled to the West Bank city of Ramallah, where he met with Palestinian Authority Mahmoud Abbas. The understanding is the White House is looking to strengthen the Palestinian Authority as Hamas gained tremendous support among Palestinians throughout the West Bank and possibly Gaza in the wake of the recent escalation in violence between Israel and Gaza. After his meetings in Ramallah, Blinken will be traveling to Jordan and then on to Egypt. The subjects of discussion there will be the same about regional stability and about the terms of ceasefire going forward between Hamas and Israel. Stephanie Fried, CGTN, Tel Aviv.
Europe's largest residential property group, Vonovia, has taken over rival Deutsche Wohnen. The $22 billion deal will create a company that controls more than 500,000 apartments across Germany. The deal risks further stoking tensions over affordable housing. German landlords have come under fire over the past few years over rising prices, particularly in the nation's capital, Berlin.
India's Tata Steel has announced it will compensate the families of workers who died of coronavirus. The company will continue to pay the dead employees' salaries, housing and medical benefits until what would have been their retirement age of 60.
Chinese tech giant Huawei will launch its new Harmony operating system for smartphones on June the 2nd. It's the company's biggest move yet to try and recover from the damage done by US sanctions to its mobile phone business. Having its own operating system means the company will no longer be reliant on Android.
Shares in Xiaomi jumped more than 4% in Hong Kong after London's FTSE Russell said it will add the company back to its global indices. Luokung Technology was also going to be added back after the two companies were removed from a blacklist by the US government.
A pandemic solution that gets rid of pollution. We check out the high-tech masks and window screens that keep out more than just viruses.
Search CGTN Europe wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe to The Agenda podcast. The Agenda with me, Stephen Cole, always gets to the heart of the story. Just subscribe today and listen now.
Covering the world from 4 continents. A new horizon. Teams in Beijing, Washington, D.C., Nairobi, and London. Who connect, interact, and inquire to bring you the stories that matter to all. The Link, only on CGTN. Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. As we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN.
Welcome back. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has been speaking at the Munich Security Conference, where the European Union and China are looking to boost cooperation. The CGTN's correspondent Nui Jabarkil has been following events. Nui, good to see you. What were the highlights from Wang Yi's speech?
Well, essentially, Juliet, Wang Yi calling for more cooperation for the two sides on what's an increasingly important relationship, but one that has been strained in recent times. Important because China overtook the US to become the EU's largest trading partner last year, trade relationship worth $710 billion almost. So any economic recovery for the global economy is going to need the two sides to work together. But really, this high-level dialogue brought together Wang Yi with some former heavyweights in European foreign policy. Federica Mogherini, one name that some viewers may know, she was the EU's foreign policy chief, as well as Sigmar Gabriel, who was the German foreign minister. And what it was looking to do essentially was answer a key question, which is turning into a real focus for countries, not just in the European Union, but across the Western world, and that's how to deal with the rise of China. Just to give you an indication of where the EU stands on that, in a recent document it called China not just a partner but also a competitor and a systemic rival, something Wang Yi said didn't sit too well with Beijing.
In recent years, some have talked about China's successful path and system as being a shock and threat to the West. In Europe, quite some people have defined China as a systemic rival. This is something we cannot agree with. As for what system a country may adopt, there is no one-size-fits-all model. Countries differ in history, culture, and social system, just like the food that is different in the Chinese and Western cuisines that use either chopsticks or knife and fork.
And that issue of different political systems, or sovereignty, as Beijing has repeatedly called it, really coming into the fore in recent weeks, because just last week the European Parliament decided to overwhelmingly vote against, or rather to put on hold, EU-China trade deal, which would have been very, very significant for both sides. It decided to put it on hold overwhelmingly until Beijing lifted retaliatory sanctions that it slapped on European politicians and also some institutions in the bloc. Now, Beijing says it took that decision, Wang Yi reiterating that today, because of sanctions that the European Union decided to put on certain officials in China over alleged human rights abuses in Xinjiang. Wang Yi reiterating Beijing's claims that there are no instances of human rights abuses there, but said that it was one area that the two sides needed to work together, especially if they're going to try and solidify their relationship in the years to come. Juliet.
So that investment deal between China and the European Union, one of the issues, there are others too, aren't there, that both sides need to work together on?
Yeah, and this conference bringing together Wang Yi with these two other speakers who really did work closely together, whether it was the Iran nuclear deal in 2015, Federica Mogherini, a key person who led those negotiations alongside Wang Yi, but also there are several other more pressing issues, whether it's COVID-19 or whether it's climate change, where the two sides are going to have to work together on. That's something that's generally accepted here in the West as well as in Beijing. Here's what Sigmar Gabriel had to say about the areas for the two sides to jointly cooperate.
None of the global challenges can be mastered and solved without China's contribution, be it countering climate change, the fight against pandemics, the fight against proliferation of nuclear weapons, conflict resolution, or the fight against hunger and poverty in the world. Only if the United States, China and Europe work together, these global challenges can be overcome.
Now, the overarching theme from here is that there are certainly challenges ahead in this relationship, but it's one that both sides are showing political will to try and resolve, especially moving forward. And the other important thing is there is dialogue. This sort of high-level dialogue is something that isn't really taking place when it comes to Washington and London. And as far as Beijing's concerned, that can only be a good thing.
Luigi Barkil, thank you.
China's top diplomat is heading to Slovenia and Croatia for a three-day official visit. It's hoped Yang Jiechi's visit will further promote China's cooperation with Central and Eastern European countries. CGTN's Alyosha Milenkovic reports.
Yang Jiechi's trip to Slovenia comes after his high-profile visit to Russia, where he met the Secretary of the Security Council, Nikolai Patrushev. Although no details of the Moscow talks have been disclosed, experts say the two officials most likely addressed a possible meeting between Presidents Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, expected later this year. Another focus, according to analysts, may have been the highly anticipated meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Joe Biden, which could take place in Geneva next month. It is no secret that China and Russia work very closely together in the international political arena, and that they not only exchange information, but also coordinate moves. Meanwhile, here in Slovenia, Yang Jiechi will meet President Borut Pahor, and also in a separate meeting, the Defense Minister Matej Tonin. How to strengthen and expand ties between Slovenia and China will be on the table during the sessions. On Wednesday, Yang Jiechi will continue his three-day tour visit of the Western Balkans with a stop in the Croatian capital, Zagreb. Alyosha Milenkovic, CGTN, Bled in Slovenia.
And we'll have more on the developing ties between China and the countries of Central and Eastern Europe later in the programme, as our Way Forward series continues.
Germany's antitrust office has launched an investigation into Google after a recent change in the law to give authorities more powers. Ryan Thompson's in Frankfurt and joins us now. Hello to you, Ryan. So what's behind this investigation and how does it fit in with the EU's own probe into Google?
Yeah, well, Robin, Google and its video streaming service YouTube are the most popular websites in Germany, and millions of internet users every day bounce between Gmail, Google Maps, the translation services, and even travel websites. Now, Germany's antitrust watchdog wants to know that whether Google has an unfair advantage compared to other search engines as users bounce around between Google's suite of products, and whether specifically visitors have enough choice in how that data transfers between each tool and what they know about it. This inquiry could even push Google to face some fines or potentially legal action against Google Germany, and then they also the EU subsidy of Google, Google Ireland. If you recall, Google has come under lots of scrutiny within Europe, notably about $10 billion in fines from the European Commission in January. There are also two ongoing EU investigations looking into how they process data and technology and how that plays into their advertising role across the bloc.
And it's not just Google, is it, that's come under scrutiny from German authorities? Who else are they looking into?
Yeah, this same agency, just the same time last week, we were talking about their inquiry into Amazon for the same exact purposes, this question of antitrust and whether they have an unfair market competition and whether they're coming to dominate their ability to sell goods to German consumers. The head of the Federal Cartel Office even suggested that potentially Amazon had an almost unchallengeable position of economic power. And now, Robin, normally these type of inquiries wouldn't be so possible for an antitrust office looking into internet data. In theory, it doesn't really sound like it goes together, but this is all the result of a new law that was passed in January that really allowed this commission to take on big tech, to look into these types of questions as questions of not just data, but antitrust and whether somebody has an unfair advantage. I think it's not unlikely we will continue to see this pattern looking into some of the other big tech names coordinate similarly in line to some of the EU-wide action.
Ryan, good to talk to you. Ryan Thompson there in Frankfurt.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, US President Biden is meeting the family of George Floyd 1 year after he was murdered in police custody.
More than 100,000 people in Italy have now died from COVID-19.
The vaccination programme offers some hope for the future, but intensive care units are near capacity.
The Spanish government is hoping to vaccinate over 1 million people by next month.
Living in Germany are struggling with their mental health.
Hungary is supplementing the EU's vaccine rollout, buying doses from Russia and China to speed up the process.
4 million people have tested positive in France.
After a grim winter, the promise of a spring bloom that could mean freedom for millions.
On the agenda with me, Stephen Cole, we look up into space. We look down into data. We look at debt. We look at politics. We look at opioids, climate change. We look at all the issues that really matter around the world. But you matter too. We want to tell the stories you want to see and hear about. Make it your agenda.
We can try out the wild and crazy idea.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time is coming. This idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we try to save the world.
Oh, no.
We hope it will happen. We have to live it up.
The agreement is signed. But what is the real deal now the UK has left the EU? For trade, for business, for the city, for ordinary people. Make sense of Brexit with CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Robin Dwyer and me, Juliet Mann. Our top stories. Belarus flights grounded as other airlines avoid Belarusian airspace, with further measures expected over Sunday's Ryanair diversion.
China's foreign minister tells a security conference that Beijing is ready to expand cooperation with Europe.
And taking on the tech giants, Germany's antitrust watchdog launches an investigation into Google. Well, China's largest bank says it has permission to set up a wealth management firm with the Wall Street giant Goldman Sachs. I know who can give us a bit of more information on this, and it's John Terrett, who's in New York at the Stock Exchange for us. Good to see you, John. Look, how significant is this deal? I mean, is it a watershed moment for Wall Street in China?
Well, I'll tell you what I think about this. I think that there's a huge irony here, because Goldman Sachs is the symbol of capitalism on Wall Street. I know there are other companies that are very important here, but honestly, Goldman Sachs is the company. Their CEO, by the way, is a part-time DJ at the weekends, but that's another story for another day. If you work for Goldman Sachs, then you are absolutely made for life. And so here is the symbol of capitalism teaming up with China's biggest bank by assets, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, based in Beijing. Now, what is deliciously ironic as well is that the ICBC is based in Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, and they've been there for years. And in 2012, they were Trump's biggest tenant. And they also have other sort of, I suppose you call them branches, really. They were given permission to open branches here a number of years ago. They have other branches on Canal Street and Madison Avenue and in Brooklyn and in Flushing, Queens as well. Flushing is a very big Chinese community, the biggest, actually. And so they've been given permission, these two companies, Goldman Sachs and ICBC, to come together and create a joint venture that will be based in China. Now, this is divisions of each company coming together, you understand. My understanding of this is that they've been waiting for quite the right moment to announce this. kind of been thinking about it for a long time. They couldn't do it when Trump was in office, of course, and they've been waiting for things to settle down regarding President Biden. So now the announcement comes today. Goldman's will hold 51%. ICBC will hold the rest, so that's 49%. And why are they doing it? Well, China has a $54 trillion financial landscape, which is opening up more and more. The banks are very aware of this, all of them. They're all staffing up in the region. They're all expanding their footprint in the region. And what I think they think is the key to this, of all the banking disciplines that there are, is wealth management. Now, wealth management comes down to how people invest their money, how they borrow it, how they spend it, how they manage it, how they protect what assets they have. That's what they're going to be doing. And it's considered to be a major growth area. And in fact, we have a statistic for you here. This pool of managed assets within China is expected to grow to $70 trillion by the end of the decade, the year 2030. So that's the story behind this, as Wall Street meets, China's biggest state-controlled bank, remember.
Wow, those certainly are massive numbers. While we've got you here, let's talk about another Wall Street darling, Tesla, because they're also in the spotlight in China. What can you tell us about that?
Right. Well, the news today, and it's only broken in the last couple of hours when we were waking up here, is that Tesla is going to set up I suppose you'd call it a data bank or a data store. I mean, it's not going to have a shop front or anything like that. It's just a building where they will store all the information from the Teslas that they build in China. So they build the Model 3 there and the Model Y there. And this is all coming down to sensitivity about these cars being connected. Years ago when I was a boy, you used to have a model, not a Model T Ford, but a Ford Cortina, for example, going around the M25, and it was just kind of on its own. Now these cars are completely connected. They know everything about them at every minute of every day, and particularly sensitive is the cameras on board the Tesla. And I did some research, and I think there's about 8 of them on the Model 3 and the Model Y. And China is very concerned about these cameras because you never quite know when they're on, when they're off, what they're looking at, and where they're transmitting it to. So all this data is now going to be stored by Tesla, and they're going to keep it in China. This comes after the military stopped buying Teslas for this reason. Staff who do own Teslas in China, it's perfectly okay to own a Tesla in China, but staff who have sensitive jobs have been asked not to park them near government buildings, for example. And China is drafting new laws to look at this whole issue of connected vehicles going forward. Now, China is Tesla's second biggest market behind this one, the United States. It has been losing ground lately, though, to its market in China because China is going absolutely EV crazy. Here in America, I think it's only about 1% of cars are electric and, heading the way of artificial intelligence. But in China, they are really embracing the notion. And the sales prove that. Sales of companies like Li Auto in Beijing, Xiaopeng, which Americans call XPeng, and BYD, and crucially Neo, which is based in Shanghai. Now, they doubled their deliveries last year. In 2020, they sent out 43,728 vehicles. So for all these reasons, this pressure building on Tesla in its number 2 market, Tesla is, I think, moving to try and keep everybody sweet. Shall we say that?
Well, back to your number 1 market. Any news on Amazon?
Yes. I know, it's just come in. 2 things to say, actually. Number 1 is we are expecting the deal with MGM, the movie company, to be confirmed as early as today, Monday, possibly Tuesday. It looks like that's going ahead. But also, just in the last 20 minutes or so, the D.C. Attorney General. Now, this is not the country's Attorney General. That would be Merrick Garland. But this is the Washington, D.C. Attorney General, a person called Carl Racine, has just announced that he's suing Amazon for antitrust grounds, claiming the company's practices have unfairly raised prices for consumers and suppressed innovation. Wall Street hardly noticed. Shares fell by 1%. Juliet and Robbie?
Well, investors are not that keen on talking about that, but yeah, these antitrust cases, we're going to hear more of them. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks, John.
Mali's interim vice president, Colonel Assimi Goïta, says he has seized power after the president and prime minister failed to consult him about the formation of a new government. The military takeover in August ousted the previous president, and transitional leaders were put in place tasked with overseeing a return to democratic elections next year. In a statement read by his aide on national television, Greta said he was acting to protect the transition and defend the republic. He said elections would be held next year as planned.
The US State Department is urging its citizens against travel to Japan, just 2 months before the Tokyo Olympics are due to begin. The country is experiencing a new wave of coronavirus cases and is under a state of emergency. Top Olympic and Japanese officials have vowed the Games will go ahead as planned.
Light rail services have resumed in Malaysia after a crash on Monday which injured more than 200 people. 2 metro trains collided in an underground tunnel in the capital, Kuala Lumpur. Amateur video showed injured passengers lying in the train carriage and on the platform waiting for medical help. 47 people were seriously hurt.
Indian authorities are racing to evacuate nearly 2 million people from the east coast ahead of a powerful cyclone. Cyclone Yaas in the Bay of Bengal is due to reach land on Wednesday. It comes after 155 people died in another storm which hit the west coast a week ago. Evacuation plans have also been hampered as India battles high levels of coronavirus.
India's official daily infection rate has fallen to the lowest level in nearly 6 weeks, offering hope that a devastating second wave is ebbing. On Tuesday, the country posted just over 196,000 coronavirus cases. Government leaders say shortages of vaccines are a big concern. Barely 3% of the country's 1.3 billion people have been vaccinated.
Jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny says he's learned of 3 new criminal investigations against him. The new charges centre on allegations of theft from his anti-corruption foundation, human rights violations and insulting a judge. The Russian Investigative Committee has confirmed it opened new cases against the dissident, who joked in an Instagram post that he was becoming more of a hardened criminal every day.
Events are being held across America to mark 1 year since George Floyd was killed in police custody. Last month, a former officer was found guilty of murdering the unarmed black man after kneeling on his neck. CGTN's Philip Crowther is in Minneapolis, where the murder happened. So, Philip, how are people marking the day? What's the atmosphere like?
I'll tell you what, this is a place that has been a place of remembrance and mourning, really, but also of activism over the last year. A place that has been very serious, where a lot of very, very deep conversations have happened as well between people of different races, for example, about racism in the United States, about police brutality as well. Though today is supposed to have a very different atmosphere, an atmosphere of celebration with food being served, with children's activities as well, and a lot of music and dancing. But I got to tell you that there is a little bit of tension in the air. Only a few hours ago, we heard somewhere between 24 and 30 gunshots being fired in the vicinity of George Floyd Square that you can see behind me, with everybody running for cover, and it appears nobody, at least here, having been injured. So that's just one example of just a little bit of that tension that remains here. And let me tell you what the reaction from a lot of the activists and organizers here is to that shooting and us reporting on it. They are telling us essentially this happens here all the time. Please concentrate on the commemorations instead. So in a sense, that gives you an idea of how much work there is still to be done, both here in Minneapolis and, of course, across the country. We do expect there, by the way, to be a moment of silence tonight, both at the beginning of commemoration events here, but also at the precise moment 1 year ago when George Floyd died. Of course, that is going to be a very prolonged moment of silence, because it's going to be the time that the now convicted ex-Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin pressed his knee into the neck of George Floyd and murdered him.
And Philip, also today, George Floyd's family is meeting the US president. What will they be talking about?
Well, look, there's one priority really for activists, for the family as well, and for Democrats generally, and that includes, of course, US President Joe Biden. That is to get a comprehensive reform bill passed through the US Congress. Now, what they wanted, this is a police reform bill, of course. What they wanted to do is get this done by today, by the anniversary of George Floyd's death. That is not going to happen. That reform bill has not made its way through Congress because of what appears at this point Republican opposition in the US Senate. So there will be some lobbying on behalf of George Floyd's family. They're happening at the actual White House. There has been contact before between US President Joe Biden and the Floyd family. For example, right after the guilty verdict for Derek Chauvin, he was, of course, convicted of murder in the death of George Floyd. There was a very quick phone call between Joe Biden and the family attorney. There is contact between them, and there is an attempt from everybody involved, from activists, from the family, from the White House as well, to get some serious police reform done. Now, what would that include? Well, for example, a national ban on chokeholds as well. Also, a national registry for police officers who were guilty of serious misdemeanors, violence during their work within their respective police departments. But that reform bill is just not going to make it through Congress in time for today, in time for the one-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd.
Philip, good talking to you. Philip Crowther there in Minneapolis. All this week, we're looking at the common threads that intertwine the futures of China and Eastern and Central Europe, from transport to trade, sports to culture. Today, we'll show you how the two regions are being brought closer by technology.
In Eastern and Central Europe, Chinese technology is bound up in everyday life, from mobile phones to power lines, X-ray scanners and laptops. All are made by Chinese companies on Eastern European soil. Hungary is host to one of China's most famous brands, Huawei, with the mobile giant's largest supply centre outside of China, as well as a new R&D centre. In Poland, New Tech won awards for the X-ray scanners it makes there. And in the Czech Republic, Changhong Europe Electric built an LCD and LED television factory.
Lenovo has become a household name, not just in China, but around the world. And right now, the assembly lines are starting to roll at its newest manufacturing hub in Ulo, Hungary. I spoke to Anita Lukács, Lenovo's general manager in Hungary. I asked her what makes Hungary an attractive destination for tech manufacturers.
I'm very proud and happy that Lenovo has chosen to invest in Hungary with the facility in Ulo as part of our global manufacturing site. As we have more than 30 manufacturing sites all over the world, from China, Japan, India to USA, Mexico and Brazil. And now we will have a leg in Europe, a factory in Hungary, which will supply products to our EMEA region, which is Europe, Middle East and Africa. And the decision was not easy. It was a 2 years long RFP process, actually, to select Hungary. And the main points I would like to mention why Hungary is, first of all, the location. Hungary is in the heart of Europe. We can tell on main transport routes, be it railways or road, very close to commercial hubs, airports, seaports. So it's really very easy to make our direct shipments to our partners and customers out of Hungary on one hand. On the other hand, it's very easy to bring in parts that supply the factory in the production. So definitely the geographical part was a main point. But on top of that, the workforce is very important. Hungary has a very good education system and there is available skilled workforce.
And obviously we're in the middle of a difficult period with the pandemic. Has that added additional challenges to getting this project up and running?
Oh, that was really interesting. Nobody could prepare for a COVID-19 pandemic, definitely. We did not. We announced the factory just last September 2020, and we had a short 10 months to make the projects complete because our deadline was May 2021, so actually now, to finish the factory building and start the work here, which I'm happy to tell we did. So this week we received the permits and the pilot production can start. But to make it in a pandemic when freedom of movement was completely forbidden, when international travel was completely forbidden, was really something exceptional.
When it comes to Chinese investment, how important has that been for the region?
I think that in Hungary, usually, there is a very friendly atmosphere towards Chinese investment. We have a lot in the country. Lenovo is not the only one, but maybe in the IT sector, and especially in this industry, we are really unique to have investment in Hungary. And we have some other parts of Eastern Europe, especially, where Lenovo made investments already. We have, for more than 10 years, maybe a little longer as well, a big operational center, HQ in Slovakia, Bratislava. We have a very big technical server laboratory in Romania, Bucharest. And I already mentioned, I think in the beginning, that we have, for example, a financial center as well in Hungary, which is serving not only EMEA region, but worldwide. So this whole Eastern European territory is really a focus area for us in Lenovo, which I think is very good and I'm very proud of.
Well, while Lenovo is bringing Chinese technology to Eastern Europe, a Czech company is bringing Eastern European technology to China. Meng Qingsheng reports.
It is an upgrade of our general nanofiber mask.
This mask is made with nanofibers coated with a layer of accelerated copper oxide. That means it can kill viruses and be used over an extended period of time. The product was designed by Respirant Group in the Czech Republic last year at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is also when the company opened its Chengdu office in southwest China.
More and more people are now paying attention to their health and safety, and we believe that more and more people are open to spend more money on protecting themselves and their loved ones. So we actually believe this experience, however it was unpleasant, it does provide a lot of opportunities for companies like ours and others.
Last year, the Central European company worked with the Chinese partners to produce more than 5 million masks. It's a success story made possible by the political links and transport links that connect China and the Czech Republic. The Czech Consul General in Chengdu says the arrival of direct flights between the two countries has gone a long way towards strengthening cultural and trade ties.
We really hope that the potential is in West and South China. So we believe that we can match Chinese interests and our interests. And we would like to bring Czech companies into Southwest China. We have great know-how which we would like to share.
Last year, China's foreign trade with the Central and Eastern European countries increased by 8.4% year-on-year, and for the first time, it has surpassed $100 billion. The growth outpaced China's trade with the European Union over the same period. For Respirant Group, the challenge is convincing Chinese customers that its high-end face masks are worth the price.
So the challenge is to explain the customers the benefits and the advantages of investing a little bit more into their health. We've been developing our online channels, so we offer our products on several of the major Chinese e-commerce platforms like Taobao and WeChat. We have been developing our other channels especially for the window screens. So we try to work with some other large partners.
The nanofibers on this Respirant window screen are able to filter out not just viruses, but also allergens and air pollution. It's a hot product on the Chinese market, snapped up by customers in Beijing and Tianjin. And its success looks set to grow. The company plans to expand into 10 Chinese cities by the end of the year. Meng Qingsheng, CGTN, Chengdu, Sichuan Province.
E-commerce is booming, and nowhere more so than in Ukraine, where a record number of customers are clicking their way to China's retailers. Kate Baklitskaya reports from Kiev.
While many businesses have struggled with the lack of demand caused by the coronavirus pandemic, Ukraine's postal operator Ukrposhta has had the opposite problem. Lockdowns and home working has prompted a surge in demand for deliveries, particularly from China, which accounts for 70% of Ukraine's online shopping. Ukrposhta has responded by forming a partnership with Chinese companies to find more efficient and faster supply routes.
China goods, it's very important for Ukrainian customers and clients. In the last COVID year, increase the volume of items from China.
In 2019, the Ukrainian government increased the tax-free threshold for imported goods to €100, thus giving a push to e-commerce. And with COVID-19 lockdowns in 2020, Ukrainians spent 40% more online year-on-year, breaking all records. Ukraine-Chinese trade turnover last year increased by a fifth, and amounted to more than 15 billion US dollars, according to Ukraine's customs, with China remaining Ukraine's #1 trading partner and primary import destination.
That's Kate Bakletskaya from Kiev in Ukraine.
Well, tomorrow on The Way Forward, we ride a railway that stretches from Beijing to Budapest and beyond. We'll find out how it's transforming global trade.
Still ahead on Global Business Europe, filling potholes with plastic. Is this the road to sustainability?
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Mari, what would you say is a good question?
Stephen, I'd say it's one where there's always more than one answer.
The Answers Project is a new podcast series from CGTN Europe. With me, Stephen Cole.
And me, Mari Beveridge. In each episode, we'll take a complex question.
And with the help of some of the world's foremost experts, shine light on some of the answers. So join us for The Answers Project.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Potholes in a road in the north of England are being filled with recycled plastic. 850 kilograms of it, equivalent to 170,000 supermarket carrier bags. It's part of an experiment Volvo Car UK is involved in, as the auto company looks to a more sustainable future. I spoke to Managing Director Christian Elfors and asked him how building a plastic road helps.
We have some innovations that we looked through, and we were able to choose this phenomenal idea of using reusable plastic actually for filling potholes. So I think we are doing innovation and investment in something that is sustainable and safe.
What is innovative about it, particularly innovative about it? Because sometimes people say, well, when we recycle, when we reuse stuff, we're actually creating more carbon monoxide and greenhouse gases.
No, I think the opportunity we have is that we're using recycled plastic that was actually supposed to go in the landfill, and we are using it in potholes, which is quite an issue for us in the UK, as we have a lot of damages and a lot of accidents on the bicycles as we are feeling we have a lot of potholes to fill.
So how does building a plastic road fit into Volvo's quest to go greener?
No, I think this is part of a really unique and interesting idea of helping out with solutions that actually is sustainable for the roads, not only for car drivers but also for cyclists. So all and everything that is sustainable and safe and part of the traffic transformation and ownership of a car or cycle in Europe could be good for us.
You mentioned cyclists there, but I want to talk about cars, the cars that you make, because you've got very ambitious electrification and autonomous vehicle plans. I mean, in terms of sales and in terms of, you know, customer appetite, are you really on track to be all electric by the end of the decade?
Yeah, we absolutely are, and I think already we can see today that we are selling more than a third of our cars are either plug-in hybrid electric cars or full electric cars, and by 2025 we estimate about 2/3 of our cars should be fully electric. So we are able to fulfill the government's 2030 targets, and I think actually we should be able to do it already in 2028.
Now, you're pooling a lot of your tech resources with Geely. I mean, where do you think Volvo then fits into the global race against climate change? You know, are you a partner? Are you a pioneer? Or are you something else?
I think we are pioneering. I think we are absolutely, we are a small, bold and innovative car manufacturer in the Nordics with a global footprint. And I think the entrepreneurial power you have seen the last year is also what you can see in our growth in Europe and the rest of the world right now. So, no, we are absolutely leading the pave for the future.
What about the impact of COVID-19 on the company? The financial cost, but also the effect it's had on the team and the way the business runs?
I think mental health is a really interesting one because we have not seen each other, we haven't met our colleagues, we haven't been able to go out to the house. And I think bringing us back to not only the office, but be able to meet friends and families outside is super important for us.
I hear that you're revisiting the idea of a Stockholm Nasdaq listing later this year. Can you tell me more about that?
No, I can't at the moment. I think the headquarters, they are announcing that when they have more information.
Oh, it's just I thought, you know, you were going to IPO a few years ago and there were concerns about, you know, potential trade war, and I wonder if you could just tell me how maybe the conversation in the boardroom and at the water cooler or on Zoom has changed.
I hope I could be part of the boardroom, but I haven't been, so I have no comments to it.
Nice try. The headlines again. Belarus flights grounded as other airlines avoid Belarusian airspace, with further measures expected over Sunday's Ryanair diversion. China's foreign minister tells a security conference that Beijing is ready to expand cooperation with Europe. And taking on the tech giants, Germany's antitrust watchdog launches an investigation into Google. Well, that's it for Global Business Europe. Thanks for watching. And there's more on all of our stories at europe.cgtn.com, and follow us, CGTN Europe, on Twitter, on Facebook and on Instagram. We're available to watch on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and Dailymotion, as well as CGTN.com and the CGTN app. Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. See you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all the team here in London, goodbye. Goodbye.